Consider supporting the work of Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian by becoming a monthly patron. Your contributions will help keep the resource alive and support its mission. Visit patreon.com/NAHblog to learn more and make a contribution of $3, $5, $10, or $20 per month. Again, that's patreon.com/NAHblog. You can start or stop anytime. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian podcast. I'm your host, Relando Tompkins-Jones. I'm a social worker, social justice educator, writer, organizational consultant, and now podcaster who works to build more equitable and inclusive communities. I am also an aspiring humanitarian. My experiences have shown me that in the process of working for social justice outwardly, it's also important for us to continue to critically examine ourselves, shedding attitudes and behaviors that are oppressive to make room for those that are more inclusive, just, and humanitarian. What is an aspiring humanitarian, you ask? When I say humanitarian, I don't mean humanitarian in the harmful sense of placing ourselves in the role of a benevolent hero who's there to swoop in and save others. I mean dedicating one's life, time, and energy to honoring the ways that our destinies are intertwined. It's about accepting the lifelong pursuit to become more humane to those around us, with the recognition that we lose important parts of our humanity when we allow and enable the suffering of others. It means acknowledging our many contradictions and complications and aspiring to do more, aspiring to do better. It means acknowledging that systems of oppression exist by design and not by accident, and working towards an individual and collective transformation that includes an unshakable belief that our society's safety, viability, survival, and ability to thrive is only as secure as our most marginalized community members. Since 2011, my blog, Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian, has been a place where I've written and curated content on issues of equity and social justice. Through using written word, film, and video, and other forms of media for social justice education, I hope to continue to expand and enrich the narratives about social issues that face our society and to find ways to take action while encouraging others to do the same. Today, the blog and now the podcast is for others who share a passion for that same journey. No matter who you are, where you come from, what your identities are, or what area of work you're in, there's room enough for all of us in this work, and I hope that engaging with the podcast or the blog can move you closer to discovering or reaffirming your answers to the questions that you may have about how you can best be of service. Thank you for choosing the Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian podcast. I'm your host, Relando Tompkins-Jones. I'm reflecting on the workplace this week. And in particular, I'm thinking of the multiple ways the pandemic has negatively impacted the lives of people with marginalized identities in the workplace. In this week's episode, I have a call for organizational leaders to practice intention and to center equity in their decision-making. And I also have an affirmation for staff with marginalized identities within organizations in the event that leadership is unwilling to do that. So to the leaders, and I mean that in reality and also in quotation marks where it applies, your employees or team members will remember how you responded to their lives and their needs during this pandemic. How your organization looks, feels, succeeds, or fails when this ends largely depends on the actions of institutional leadership. History is being recorded even in this moment as events continue to unfold. The pandemic has exacerbated the impact of systems of oppression that target the lives of people with marginalized identities, and the workplace is no exception. Instead of looking to past atrocities and imagining what you would have done, this is a perfect time to reflect on what you're doing right now. Are you centering the voices and needs of marginalized people and communities in your decision-making? Think of your people, policies, and practices. Are you putting people or profit at the center? Are the conditions within your organization primed to support people with marginalized identities in this critical time? Or does your organizational climate replicate and amplify those already existing inequities that make it harder for them to survive? Saying times were hard for everybody will not be a satisfactory answer in the long view of history because times aren't hard for everybody equitably right now. So, what are you doing to produce more equitable and socially just outcomes right now? Because the people will remember. And to the staff with marginalized identities, you are not expendable. You are not replaceable. And you deserve to work in an environment that is supportive and affirming of you. I'm going to say that one more time. To the staff with marginalized identities, you are not expendable. You are not replaceable. And you deserve to work in an environment that is supportive of you and that is also affirming to you. In its deadly relentlessness, the pandemic has presented many opportunities for reflection and reevaluation. Sadly, instead of recognizing the opportunities that exist to turn inward toward one another for support and the collective adaptation and problem solving that's necessary for this moment, and even for a more equitable world that could await us after the pandemic has ended, some organizations have turned inward against their people in maladaptive and ultimately self destructive ways, which threaten their own survival and viability in the long term. While many of these self destructive behaviors exist, one dynamic I work against often as an organizational consultant is the strategy of using fear and scarcity as a motivator for increasing productivity and acceptance of oppressive working conditions. One of the ways I see it manifested is through the creation and sustaining of a scarcity culture of gratitude and indebtedness. That is, those subtle and overt actions and messages that communicate to employees that they should be grateful to have a job in a way that asserts an obligation of indebtedness. Those dynamics that create a feeling that something is owed. Like you owe your toxic supervisor, your toxic CEO. You owe it to your students, to your patients, to your clients, to your teammates. You owe it to your community or others. You owe it to people who have a variety of needs to stay in an impressive environment where you are ultimately set up to fail, among a host of other issues. So, these dynamics that create that feeling that something is owed, you owe it to other people to stay in an environment that's oppressive when the conditions are not in place that are conducive to your thriving, your ability to do your work in a way that benefits others and then is also sustaining to you. So I'm trying to focus on this dynamic that creates this sense of gratitude and indebtedness in a way that is really, really warped here. It's often a precursor to or accompanied by an abusive dynamic where, in addition to that, employees are gaslighted into feeling as if they should not only be grateful to have jobs in this economy, but that no other job would take them. Even though this isn't true in reality, the pervasiveness of systems of oppression and the disparate conditions created by those systems make experiencing this scarcity a very real possibility for people with marginalized identities. Still, I want to acknowledge this for the power and control dynamic that it is. It is a power and control tactic to create this feeling of scarcity and the messaging that asserts that not only should you be grateful to have a job in this economy, but that you couldn't do work anywhere else. If you have ever experienced or are currently experiencing this dynamic, I want to affirm that each of us are complete and inherently worthy people. You were complete and inherently worthy before you came to that workplace. You are complete and inherently worthy now. And you will be complete and inherently worthy whenever or if ever you leave or if the environment changes. This energy of indebtedness, this expectation of a warped kind of gratitude for leadership without accountability from leadership, is ultimately a self destructive organizational practice if not addressed in words, as well as actions, which include policy change at the interpersonal, institutional, and structural levels. So, in addition to sharing and affirming your inherent value, your inherent worthiness, I also want to affirm that it is okay to shift if that's necessary. It's okay to shift. People with marginalized identities put in major work in companies, organizations, and institutions, making space for themselves and the ones who will come after in environments that did not have them in mind when they were created and are often resistant to the equity that they strive to bring about. It's okay to resist. It's okay to fight for change. It's okay to build coalitions and organize and work in solidarity with others to bring about the changes we seek. And it is also okay to consider your own multiple and varied needs, including your mental and physical health in the process. It's okay to reevaluate. And if you come to the realization that you need to after you have some time to reflect, it's okay to shift. It's okay to change directions. It's okay to put a plan in place that works best for you, that will enable you to move to a more supportive and restorative environment when opportunity calls for you. And it's okay to realize that doing so does not mean that you lack commitment, that you're abandoning people, or whatever messaging you might get in an attempt to convince you that your experiences aren't real or to stay in an environment that isn't healthy for you. One thing I've found helpful when I've personally experienced this is to remember my own sense of service and purpose. I found that identifying and staying connected to those larger ideals allows a deeper sense of clarity and focus that transcends individual people or personalities, as well as organizations, institutions, and occupations. Those things that could be used to convince us to stay someplace where something isn't working out of some warped sense of loyalty or obligation that prevents us from being more effective and impactful than we could be. Staying focused on the larger things in this way enables us to enter environments from a partnership perspective with the understanding that sometimes needs shift and change. It enables us to remain in partnership to the degree and time that that partnership is in alignment with our values for equity and justice. It also enables us to move on when things are out of alignment with the recognition that the work is much larger than a particular environment and can be done in a variety of ways in a variety of places. There are many self reflective exercises out there to help with staying connected to your larger ideals. One exercise I'm able to return to periodically is completing a personal SWOT analysis because organizations aren't the only places where we should think ahead to the future and watch out for mission drift. Although systems of oppression create the disparate outcomes that you experience, as a human being, you are not truly expendable. You are not truly replaceable. You are more important than you may feel like while having to wade through so many oppressive messages and systems that target your identities. Your leadership, and I'm saying that in quotation marks here, but your leadership is accountable to you even more so than you are to them. That's what that mantle demands. And you are also a leader. It's important not to forget that. It's an incredible feeling to operate in the gifts that you have with the support you need to be your best self and to do your best work. Search your feelings, take inventory, evaluate however you need to. It's okay to resist. It's okay to fight for change. It's okay to build coalition and organize and work in solidarity with others to bring about the changes we seek. And if you're finding that you're out of alignment, it's okay to put a plan that works best for you in place that will enable you to move to a more supportive and restorative environment when opportunity calls for you. It's okay to shift. Thanks again for choosing the Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian podcast. I look forward to engaging with you in the next episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To find show notes for this and additional episodes, visit podcast.notesfromanaspiringhumanitarian.com. Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian is a labor of love and will continue to be. Consider supporting the work of Notes from an Aspiring Humanitarian by becoming a monthly patron. Your contributions will help keep this resource alive and support its mission. Visit patreon.com/NAHblog to learn more and make a contribution of $3, $5, $10, or $20 per month. Again, that's patreon.com/NAHblog. You can start or stop anytime. Thank you for joining me this week. Take care.